Meeting, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does any member of the council have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regards to any item in the agenda? If so, please state so at this time.
No.
Councilwoman Harris?
No.
Councilman Phillips?
No.
And Councilman Borman?
No.
Thank you. Councilman Nern is unable to attend today. He had surgery yesterday. Councilman Borman and Councilman Phillips are on Zoom, and Councilwoman Harris is by telephone, and of course, Councilman Corbett is here beside me. First up, the amendment and approval of the draft agenda. Councilman Phillips, you have anything to be amended?
I do not.
Councilman Borman?
No changes.
Councilwoman Harris?
I do not.
Councilman Corbett?
No changes.
Okay. That being said, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Any more discussion? All right, everybody ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Councilwoman Harris?
Aye.
Councilman Phillips?
Aye.
Councilman Borman?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next up will be our council discussion. Councilman Borman, do you have anything you'd like to discuss, start us off?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Phillips?
I'm good, thank you, sir.
Councilwoman Harris?
No, nothing.
And Councilman Corbett?
I have one item. I'd like to say thank you to our local nonprofit Sunset Vision. They've been carrying out a beautification project where they planted Carolina jasmine plants around the porta potty at the boat ramp parking lot. They had previously put the fencing around the porta potty. So once the jasmine goes into full growth and bloom, it'll look a lot better. Thank you.
Anything else? Moving on. We have Mr. Robert Neal here with us on a presentation for our dredging project. Mr. Neal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate it. Here before you today, just to give an update on the navigation project. There's no action today. Just want to give an update on where we were. The presentation, I believe you all have a copy. And I'm just looking at the discussion outline. And start with, want to provide a summary of where we were from last meeting to this meeting, the progress that we've conducted, and then talk about where we're going from here. And to start with, I believe from the last meeting, we heard a lot of hopes and a lot of we thinks, and those did not turn out the way we anticipated, the way we had hoped. And so we're going to talk about the status of the beach placement, you know, what happened there, what that progress was. And then during that discussion, we've actually asked for legal input from DCM on what our alternatives are, for their interpretation of those. And then looking at our next alternative, or we're narrowing it down. We have two potential alternatives left by law, and we'll discuss those by North Carolina law. So with that, we'll jump into it. Next page, looking at the project site map. Just want to focus in what we're looking at today. The outstanding item with the navigation project is where can we place the beach compatible material. We've addressed all other items in the project. We just need to see an abnormal question or problem that we're having with this project, but where can we place beach compatible material? And that beach compatible material is coming out of the area highlighted in purple here, South Jinks Creek. So this is the area that we're focusing on, is where can we place that material once dredged. And next page, looking at our first and primary placement option was to place on the beach. We were looking at several different locations for that, either on Sunset Beach or Ocean Isle Beach. We were trying to focus on Sunset Beach. Since it is a Sunset Beach project, we wanted Sunset Beach property owners to benefit from that material. However, with all of the options that we found or that we investigated, we have come across the same problem, and it's a unique problem to Sunset Beach area. Is a good problem to have, but it's that the shoreline is accreting, or generally accreting or stable, or perceived to be accreting or stable. So that presents a problem in that by North Carolina law, if any dredged material, if a publicly funded project moves beach compatible sand to the shoreline, any raised lands above mean high water, if we raise the land above mean high water, the state maintains ownership of that. They own submerged lands before we dredge it, so after we dredge that same land that they own, they maintain that title. And that, of course, creates a problem with beachfront property owners, is they have that potential to lose, or the belief, I should say, not the potential, but the belief, and this is my interpretation, but the belief that they lose property rights because the state maintains that vested interest in that land. So they are no longer shorefront property owners. The state owns that land. That is the perception of the law. We've, in this slide, I've spelled out exactly the language from the law, and it simply says, the title of the land in or immediately along the Atlantic Ocean raised above the mean high water mark by publicly financed projects which involve hydraulic dredging or other disposition of spoil materials or sand vest in the state. And so that presents a belief or conception that they lose that land, and it is, as it's written, I have to understand that concern. The law continues to state, North Carolina General Statute 146-6 continues to state, all such raised land shall remain open to the free use and enjoyment of the people of the state, consistent with the public trust rights in ocean beaches, which rights are part of the common heritage of the people of the state. So it's hard to discuss that with the property owners. They don't understand that it really doesn't change anything. And I can't speak for the state, so the potential for that to change something down the future is hard to really portray to the property owner. So we're running into that problem where we can't obtain easements because of the belief that they're going to lose property rights if they proceed with that. So that, with all the beach placement options we looked at, we were listed on the previous page. We ran into that same problem, as the property owners just don't want to give up that right to an accreting beach. An eroding beach is different because they need that protection. They need that extra additional sand. An accreting beach, the need is not necessarily as prevalent, so they're willing to take their chances, so to speak, and not take their chances with the state owning that land, but take their chances with Mother Nature and how the shoreline responds to wave impacts. But, yes, sir.
May I ask a question at this point? So what did the state say when you asked them to clarify, is the property owner's interpretation correct or not correct? Do they lose their property rights according to the state, or do they retain their property rights? I mean, if they retain their property rights, then the obstacle to dredging goes away.
The state's interpretation is it doesn't change a thing. Now, that's historical use and current administration. What happens in the future is the problem, is we can't tell the future and we can't give assurances to the property owners that nothing is going to change in the future as far as state management. The current administration, we talk to them and they're like, what's the problem? Current staff is this doesn't change a thing. We survey, nothing gets recorded, nothing goes to the deeds, nothing goes to the property appraiser, nothing is changed. We do survey the mean high water line and give it to the state, to the DCM, Division of Coastal Management, but they don't record anything. They hold it in their file, but the law is there, and what happens in the future could happen in the future, and I can't speak for the state so I can't give assurances to the property owners that what happened in the past will continue to happen in the future. It's something that our hands are tied. We've asked DCM to come and tell that, and they also can't guarantee to the future. And I would, on our team is Doug Huggett, who he doesn't speak for the state now, but he retired from the state, was the major permits coordinator, and handled several of these cases. And he is on Zoom. We could ask his opinion, but essentially we can't give the assurances to satisfy the property owners. It's out of our legal authority or ability to say that the words as they're written should be interpreted any different than the way they interpret them. So we're bound by their perspective and their interpretation and the property owner's experience.
And the state won't step up and be clear. This thing that everything could change in the future that's one heck of a waffle.
It is, and it's one that we have trouble getting around.
Robert, can I ask a follow-up on that, please?
Yes, sir.
So just to be clear, you said that there is no change to the title for the affected properties, correct?
Correct. The mean high water line is, we survey it, we give that survey to DCM, and my understanding is it stops there. There is nothing recorded, because in order for something to be recorded in a deed, for a deed to change, the property owners would need to sign off on that. The property owners would need to agree to that, and they would need to release their rights. That doesn't happen. But it is the property line and the law, the general statutes, we have to survey the mean high water line. We have to give that mean high water line to the state. And so there's a disconnect in that process.
So would that then lead us to an opportunity for a legal opinion of a real estate attorney, rather than the state, to give an opinion on the fact that there's no change in title, how that would affect the property owners? And then the second part to my question is, so if they retain those rights to the area between the mean high water and the dunes, let's say, what rights do they have to actually do something with that land?
Well, the same rights they do now. I mean, that property is, and I don't want to get too far on a tangent, because there's some property owners that just don't want the project. So we run into that too as far as easements. But they would still have, it's a vested interest to the public for the beach. I mean, the public can use the historical uses of the beach. They can continue to use those beaches. That's sand, so you still can't, you can never obstruct that by law. But what it does is we could go, we could search legal opinions. We could go to Raleigh and change the law. We could advocate to do that, or we could look at the options that are in front of us. And
right. I understand. So I think what you're saying then is, even if we had a legal opinion to say something that the state won't say, you're saying that the property owners would still not want to give that easement.
There would still be issues. I think in some portions of the project, in some locales, yes, there would still. We're not necessarily through the process, just because. Okay. But what is available to us? There were three, by rule, or North Carolina general statutes. There are three locations in which we can place the sand. We can place it along. We have to keep it in the active nearshore, beach, or inlet shoal systems.
Okay.
That's words out of the rule. So beach is placing it directly on the beach is somewhat out of the question, and I'm on the slide titled "Legal Opinion for Off Island or Upland Placement." I'm on that slide, but it's hold on. By placing on the beach, that is, we believe, is not a viable alternative, just because of the The easements and the confusion or circumstances that the issues that we're dealing with as far as the property owners, we don't see that as a viable option. It is the Creeding Beach, so we want to take that and say we're ruling that is not viable. Placing in the inlet or shoal systems also is not viable, just due to the project, the impacts that would have on Tubbs Inlet. We don't think that that's engineering-wise is a good idea to place this material back on the shoal system within the inlet. What that leaves us is the near shore. Placing in the near shore, there are no easements required. We are not raising lands above mean high water. We're simply taking beach-compatible sand and keeping it in the active near shore area. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And I think I may have it on the next slide. I do not, but before we get to what near shore placement is, we did ask the state for their official legal opinion on what are our options. Could we take it to off island? Could we stockpile the material off island somewhere so that we could avoid all confusion and all issues? Just move it upland and move it to an adjacent beach, take it to Oak Island, take it to Holden Beach, take it to some eroding beach where they need the sand, where it could be a benefit. Their answer was no. It had to stay in the system of Tubbs Inlet. It had to stay somewhere adjacent to Tubbs Inlet. We responded back. This is their exact, copied their language from their correspondence, and by their interpretation, it's very clear that it must stay in the inlet system. They did say we could stockpile it upland. However, it would have to at some point come back to the system around Tubbs Inlet, and so it would not end the project, would not be done with the project. It would prolong the issues that we're dealing with. Is how do we manage that sand once it's stockpiled upland? At some point we will still be faced with placing it in the inlet system, in the active near shore or on the beach. We could wait till a storm. Maybe we need it, and that is an option to discuss. The potential of stockpiling it, the extra cost for stockpiling it upland, securing the land, the maintenance, and keeping it separated. We thought that was not preferred because it does not satisfy, it does not end the project. Nearshore placement would put the material in the nearshore, and we would be able to say the project is done, and we can monitor the performance. If we place it upland, then we're having to continue to manage that material and look for ways to then utilize it on the beach or in the active nearshore system. So we're still faced with those discussion points, those issues. And that really is the next 2 pages. So that's why we're choosing nearshore placement, why we think nearshore placement is the preferred option, is because it is the option that allows us to move forward with the project, to say it's done. We have satisfied the rule, we have managed the material, we can look at the performance of the project. That will never be done. It will not be done immediately after construction. It will be done, but it won't be done immediately after construction. But we're saying nearshore placement for those reasons. And nearshore placement has historically been done by the Corps. It's not necessarily an option that many non-federal or towns take advantage of, because we're placing beach sand. The beach sand is a very valuable commodity, and to place that beach sand in the ocean out in somewhat deep water negates the benefit of it to a large degree. There is still some benefit there. But if you have the opportunity to place beach sand on the beach, it's a welcome opportunity. And I mean, we have Oak Island we've had discussions with them, and they're willing to truck it from here to there just to get beach sand. Everyone's looking for beach sand in the state of North Carolina except this area, and that's why it's a unique problem for Sunset Beach and a good problem to have most of the time. But we have found the situation where it is not a good problem to have is when we have sand and we're trying to get rid of it, and that has been a big problem. But nearshore placement is what we would be doing, is placing sand in 10 to 12 feet of water, so out past the breakers And I'm turning the page to the methodology for determining nearshore placement location, where we're seeing a yellow line out in the ocean. And so that is approximately where we would look to place the material. We would spread it in a thin layer, not that entire length. We're looking at somewhere in that area to place the material so that it would distribute evenly, but within 6 months you wouldn't even be able to tell we were there. And it would not be seen, it would never be seen from the shoreline. We were keeping, still maintaining navigation depth, so it would not be, there would be at least 6 feet of water above any material we place. So we're not raising lands above the mean high water line. There's no the state does no, we avoid the easement issue. There's no easements required. To place material, we have to get a pipeline around Palm Cove and into the water. So we need one or two easements versus how many ever we would need for beach placement. I think there was 300 or something. There was a lot. Anyway, so we would place that material in the near shore out beyond the breaker zone, 10 to 12 feet of water. We would fill it about 4 feet high and spread it wide so that in 6 months or so, the waves coming over, it would disperse the material and it would blend in with the existing material, with the existing surface. And if we went out there and tried to find it, we couldn't tell any difference between that. We could not tell where we placed it. So that is our intent at this point, to talk to the agencies about this option. Again, it's not generally conducted by non-federal entities or towns, municipalities, but it is an option by law, and we think that it's, at this point, the most feasible in order to draw a conclusion to the project and not continue management cost and requirements for that if we stockpiled upland. We are planning to meet. We do have an agency meeting scheduled. I believe at this point it is tentative, but most everyone is looking at June 30th to have this agency discussion of what concerns there may be along the entire island in this area. Type of concerns is later in this presentation as well, but type of concerns is, does the compatibility, does the sand that we're moving match the sand that we're going to where we're going to place it? We've really already answered that question, and while we were looking at beach placement, we have samples on the table to show that, but that we know that it does match. They're going to make us sample more, most likely. We will have to make sure there are no shipwrecks out there. We have to make sure that there's no hard bottom out there, that we're not covering habitat or archaeological artifacts. We're pretty confident that that we're going to miss both of those, that those aren't there. And they will probably not take our word for it or historical knowledge for it. They will most likely expect that they will make us go out and sample that. So there are we believe the state will require additional work for that, but that's what the June 30th meeting, so we can talk about an exact scope, what would be needed in order to have this permitted and everyone move forward comfortably. And that's the next page is talks about just those items that I just mentioned as far as what they're going to look at, how we're going to quantify through science if the material that we're dredging matches the material that we're placing. Again, we mentioned just one thing we did is we sampled both on the beach previously and in the dredge area. On this slide, it shows the 6 samples we took in the dredge area to identify what that samples are. We have bags here of both beach compatible material, both material off the beach as well as material that came from the dredge area. The green bags, the Ziploc bags, if I move away from the microphone here just a second. But the Ziploc bags that are green tops, these came from the dredge area. These are out of South Jinks Creek. And the yellow tags are from the beach itself. And so these are, Hiram has been keeping these, but most of them, I brought 2 more today, and we're going to leave those here as well. But I think a picture and touch and feel does enormous things and clears. It's much better than looking at any graphs or anything on paper. And so looking at these sites, we leave these for the public to see, because the biggest concern is the material that we're moving does not match the material that we're placing it on. And comparing these, we would like just to have that opportunity for the public to see, so they can have their own, address their own concerns. Does the material we're dredging match the material we're placing it on? And that's why these are here, and we're leaving those for the town, for the public, if they choose to make an appointment and see those.
Just to be clear, once it goes out into that offshore placement, it's not going to be visible anyway.
No, it will not.
That's correct.
No,
Okay.
it will not.
And when were these samples taken?
These samples were taken. This was taken in 2016. The green bags were taken in 2016, 2017. And the yellow bags, the beach samples. So the beach samples were taken in 2019, I believe, 2018, 2019. And the dredge samples, the green bags, were taken in 2017, summer of 2017. And the beach samples were taken probably in the summer of 2019, I believe.
It probably is likely that they're going to want new samples, new testing.
Not from the dredge area, no. The dredge area, because once the permit starts, the data we collect that's the data. And the sand in the dredge area does not change. We get more, but it's the same material. On the beach, it depends on where we place it. There are rules that we have to have. Switching to the next page, actually, this is a good showing the profile lines that we within any area that we place, we have to survey 5 lines, which are these blue lines shown on the blue. They're color coded by elevation, so they start at red in higher elevations and go offshore to blue. We have to survey 5 lines and take a minimum of 13 beach samples on each line. And so that would be about 65 samples total. So a minimum of 65 beach samples from the area that we're placing, from the nearshore area or beach area. 65 beach samples we take, we composite, we get the average requirement, the average components of that material, and compare that with the dredge material. So it's depending on where we place them, where we choose to place the material, there may be a need to sample again. This area has already been sampled. We would not need to go back to place it in this area. And again, we're offshore, so no one would see it. So this is away from the inlet. This area has already been permitted, so it's initially is a good spot to look at, because there would be no additional field work for those samples. We would still probably need to look at hard bottom and sunken ships or historical ships. But if we move that, then we would need to do additional surveys and additional sediment sampling for the beach site. But with that, we've kind of gone over this, but looking at the 2 photographs, the next slide.
Sorry, I was busy. Sorry.
No, I understand. It's again, looking at pictures, to me, we do go through the graphs and the science and look at the engineering and make sure the material matches. But again, pictures show a lot to me, and it's very clear. The non-beach compatible did not come from this graph, did not come from this project. Dug that up from another one. But the beach compatible material, we see that photograph. This is a sample taken that we dredge down. We core down into the material so that we can make sure we're not just taking a surface sample. We core down into the material to make sure we're sampling even below what we anticipate dredging. For this sample, we would not dredge below the 6. Like -6 mean low water is as low as we're going. So that in the beach compatible sample down to -6, down to the 6 foot mark is what we would be dredging away. If we look at the non-beach compatible graph, we see very clear, right off the top, the very top, that's clay, very dark clay. And so that material is not something we want on the beach. We sort of how we try and differentiate between what is acceptable to place on the beach and what is not acceptable to place on the beach. We do go through quite extensive work, and but it comes back to, the main question is, would it look good? Is it acceptable? That's our first question. It's not the main question. It's very easily answered by just looking at it, feeling it. If it's clay material, would we want to go out on the beach with that material there? That's the first, would we feel comfortable placing that on the beach? Second is, would it hurt the habitat there? Now, this is going in the near shore, but we would still expect there's habitat out there, habitat that use that sand. Are we going to impact them? And so those are all mixed in as how we sort of define what is acceptable and what is not. But before we talk about the next steps, I want to make sure that kind of any questions on that, or hearing none. The very next step, we already have the June 30th meeting. We're talking to the agencies, trying to bring the staff together to look at what it would take to actually permit a near shore site. Assuming that is, after that, we're expecting on July 6th, the next council meeting. We'll come back. I'll come back to the council to update on how that discussion went. I'm expecting the liaisons from the council to be at that meeting as well, so we'll be able to compare notes.
Is that going to be a WebEx or a Zoom meeting?
Yes, it will be online. And then, based on those results, we'd move into the permitting requirements to actually either, if we decide to go with a stockpile area, we would be investigating that. But expecting that we would be working to permit the near shore placement site, and then also completing the Corps of Engineers alternative analysis. The one outstanding item is we don't have that same thing. We don't have the location to place the sand. We have all the other information, but we need to identify where we're placing the beach compatible material, so we can use that and we can finish up the alternative analysis and complete that permitting process as well. We'll be looking to update the construction costs. That will require surveys and to look at the additional material that has come in, additional surveys within the project area. Also looking at preparing the construction plans and specifications to get those ready. We would not start those right away. We would focus first on the permitting to make sure we're moving forward with that. Once we got a good feeling, after the agencies had time to look at that, the first 30 days, they'll have their comments ready. From the July 6th meeting, we'll know what their comments are going to be. In the first 30 days that we submit the permit, they will be able to look at our response to their comments and see if they have additional comments. Expecting that we would be able to address those comments in the first submittal, we would start the construction plans and specifications and then prepare for the bid solicitation and contractor selection so that we could go to construction at the end of the year. We do expect this project to be a 2-year project just because of the volume of material to be dredged and the timing of that material. Hydraulic dredging could be done within probably, if it was beach placement, it would be within a month. Very quick process, being that it's near shore placement and weather is going to play a large part in can the contractor have his equipment out and in the ocean. It's going to be a small contractor, so that we expect it could be as much as double the time frame. So where it was a month, I'm going to give 3 months to actually place that near shore. It would be a barge anchored offshore in that 10 to 12 feet of water with a pipeline strapped to it, and then the material coming through the pipeline and then placed there, and then the barge and pipeline would move down the shoreline so that we're making sure we're not placing too much material at any one specific location. We would look at, so the hydraulic dredging would be about 3 months. We have from November 16th to March 31st to construct. So then we don't want 2 contractors or a bunch of equipment, a bunch of construction equipment. I think the intent is to keep it a smooth process through construction and not have mechanical dredging or the clamshell, the trucking going on with the non-compatible material with the hydraulic dredging of the beach compatible material. So we'd spread that out over 2 years. The next fall, we would come back and do the feeder channel, the bay area, and finger canals. So that would be a 2-year process. We could do it in 1 year, but I think the intent has been always to keep that separate, but something to think about if we choose to bring all of the construction equipment in at one time. And then that, with the approximate, I think it's about the same amount of material, 30,000 yards that we're going to do mechanical dredging. It's about 2,000 yards a week to move out, so it's 15 weeks minimum to actually complete that dredging, the mechanical. So 3 months to do the hydraulic, and then 15 weeks, which is a little over 3 months, to do the mechanical dredging. And then, so we think that would be a 2-year process, working only between November 16th and March 31st of both years. With that, again, it's just wanted to update on where we are and let you know we are moving forward with the agency coordination meeting, again in June 30th, and then hope to be back July 6th to update on what happens at that meeting. But again, appreciate the opportunity. We'll leave the sand samples here for if the public by chance wants to view those, but open it up to questions if any.
Councilman Phillips, do you have any questions for Mr. Neal?
Yeah, one of the quick ones. If it had to do the upland storage, is there a time limit that material would have to be placed back in the system?
There is not. We could technically or theoretically stockpile it indefinitely, but the management, we're taking up land at that point, and so we haven't investigated that, what that cost would be to secure that land and
Understandable. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Borman, do you have anything you'd like to add or anything you'd like to question?
Yeah, just a clarification, Robert. Which agencies will be attending that June 30th meeting?
We have asked, the main ones confirmed right now, the Corps of Engineers and DCM. We also want National Marine Fisheries as well as the North Carolina Marine Fisheries. So we're bringing in both the federal agencies and the state agencies, and the fishery units are the prominent ones. But we also want, because the permits are issued through DCM, Coastal Management, and the Corps of Engineers, we want them as well. We have asked, and I might ask Doug if he's online to help out with all of the agencies that we've invited, but the main ones, Marine Fisheries for the state of North Carolina, the National Marine Fisheries, as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Corps of Engineers, the Division of Coastal Management, and I believe Shellfish Management. Doug, is there any other ones that could you help?
Certainly. I think there are 2 other agencies that are on that list. We've asked the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission to attend, as well as the North Carolina Division of Water Resources. They also have a water quality certification permit process for this, so they would need to be involved as well. So I think between what the groups Robert said and these other groups, that's a complete listing of who we've invited so far.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Harris, do you have any questions, comments?
No, I do not.
Councilman Corbett, do you have anything?
Just sort of a clarification. The way I heard and understood you to talk about this agency coordination meeting, it's primarily going to be for them to clarify steps that we need to do. What is the likelihood that they're going to come up with new roadblocks and say, we decided we don't want you to do this? Are we past that process, or are they going to identify the steps dealing with the nearshore placement? Or could we anticipate on the 30th being told no?
The agencies won't ever tell us no. They'll tell us what we need to do in order to satisfy their concerns. And we believe that their concerns are going to be listed on one of the slides as what the necessary items that we have to go through to clear their concerns or answer their concerns. We think they're going to ask us grain size, it's compatibility of the material, number one. which is grain size, color, shell content. Those are to define that the material that we're dredging matches the material that we're going to place it on. We've been through that once, so we're very comfortable with that. They'll also ask us habitat uses. Is there hard bottom out there? Is there rock, exposed rock in the near shore in that area that we're going to cover? Being that we've already permitted one beach placement site on Sunset Beach, we're pretty confident that everyone understands there's not hard bottom there. We're not going to cover hard bottom. But I expect that they will make us go out and to sort of dot the I's and cross the T. I expect at this point they will ask us to go out and check. Shoaling impacts. Are we going to, the material that we place out there, is it going to come into Tubbs Inlet and close Tubbs Inlet? Are we going to cause erosion impacts somewhere because of that? So we want to stay away from Tubbs Inlet. We don't want to put material adjacent to the inlet. Same thing as with the beach placement. Since we permitted that beach placement, we think everyone understands that the littoral drift is toward the south. If we stay, I think 1,000 feet is the minimum that we want to get close to Tubbs Inlet. Preferably, 5,000 feet, stay a mile away. But 1,000 is the minimum. No, we really don't want to go any closer to it than 1,000 feet to that inlet opening, because that does allow the material then to go back into Tubbs Inlet and create those impacts. You're 1,000 feet out, you have that dispersion, and the material is going to be torn between Tubbs Inlet and continuing down the beach. And then between that 1,000 and 5,000 is sort of a gray area. But being again that we permitted the previous site and with no concerns there, we're comfortable that we can choose a site that would not require additional modeling or some kind of wave impact analysis to investigate that. But they're also going to look at archaeological resources. Is there shipwrecks out there that we're going to expose shipwrecks? If they're buried now and we bury them later, that's not an impact. It's exposed shipwrecks. So something sticking up, and we're pretty confident that those don't exist out there. But again, knowing where this project has been, that I expect that the habitat usage and the archaeological resources, they anticipate those could be two questions that they ask us to investigate. Hopefully
Thank you.
not.
Mr. Neal, in all due respect to you, sir, from a business standpoint of this, has this project just been poorly planned out? That's continue to carry us on? I mean, or does every town face the same thing when this project comes up, that just keeps pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and coming back with if and if and if? I mean, does everybody go through that, or is it just this project was not planned out right?
When you have the public interest that we're dealing with here and the unique scenario of we have people, like I said, you have beach sand. We have people in South Carolina laughing at us because we can't get rid of beach sand. Beach compatible material is generally considered gold along the coast, and to not be able to find an opportunity somewhere that's the beachfront property owners simply don't want more sand with the storm protection that provides, and it's unique in that. It's definitely odd, but again, it's a good problem to have. But I think with the public interest that we're having compounded with that problem, yeah, it's unique to Sunset Beach.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation, sir.
Yes.
Anything further from Mr. Neal or Mr. Huggett?
I don't have anything else. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, sir. Moving on, we'll go to our public comments time.
Mayor, real quick.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Nern wants to phone in.
All right.
You want to go ahead and set that up?
Yes, sir.
All right. Lisa, can you come help with the phone?
Just 1 second, please. Mr.
I got
Nern
his
would like
phone
to
number
join
right
into the meeting. You got the number.
Hang on a second, Mr. Serrato. There's the phone number for
Please
Charlie.
hold on 1 second. We're going to try to join Mr. Nern in. Add a call. Okay, what's the number?
You turn the volume volume up in there a little bit more.
Hiram?
This is Shannon.
Shannon?
Yes, sir.
I'm just getting my medicine, so just hold on. I'll be there in a minute.
See the ad. So where's Gene?
Merge, I think.
Yeah.
There it goes.
Now you should have Gene again.
Councilwoman Harris, can you hear me?
I can.
Councilman Nern, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
I heard Shannon also.
okay. Councilman Nern, if you'll just be quiet, I'm gonna read out this so you'll be able to hear. You just listen, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on with our meeting, our first public comment period. Do we have anybody in the back?
Mr. Serrato.
He can take the stand.
God bless you.
You're going to provide the guidance on,
Am I on? I can't.
Rick Hiram. I'm there and I work with Dr. Pedley. That's good. That's good.
You ready?
Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone, speak your name and your address, and I'll start the clock after you. You have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, just being hearing impaired, it's very difficult. The audio system here is not conducive to those who are hearing impaired.
Yes, sir.
I don't know what the town can do about it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, my first topic is the budget. And I would like at the end of the meeting read another letter regarding the dredging program. This is related to the budget. Please help me understand. The initially proposed $8.3 million budget was comprised of a wish list that did not benefit the taxpayers, that would have increased our tax rate by 4 cents or 25%. These items have been deferred because of a potential revenue shortfall because of this pandemic. We also recognize that comparing net actual expenses from year to year may be misleading due to one-time major expenses. But this is what Mrs. Drop reported. In fiscal year 17, our operating expenses were $5.7 million. In fiscal year 18, they were $5.6 million. In fiscal year 19, excluding among others the $614,000 unfunded sidewalk project and the sizable, totaling nearly $500,000 of the operating surplus reported by the auditor, the net expense would have been equal to about $6.2 million. The average net expense from fiscal year 17 through fiscal year 19 is $5.8 million. Now the town is claiming that you have reduced expenses by 7% or $576,000 compared to last year's $7.4 million budget. The operating expense now in the fiscal year 21 budget is $6.9 million, which, by the way, is the same budget as our major hub town of Charlotte. Think about that for a minute. As a matter of public record, last year's exorbitant expense budget of $7.4 million was a split vote and was approved by a newly appointed mayor at the first meeting, who never attended any budget meetings and approved a 1-cent tax increase and raised our fire fee by 6%. However, when you compare this year's $6.9 million budget compared to the average, I can't hear. 30 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'll finish up.
Yes, sir.
However, when you compare the $6.9 million expense budget to the average that I previously mentioned, it reveals that the budget has increased $1.2 million, or 17%. It is misleading to cherry pick just 1 year. Also, Mr. Mayor, as I finish up, I urge you to call a special meeting to truly analyze this budget and to eliminate the planned $27,000 bonuses allocated for employees and instead use these funds to increase the merit pay performance program for our employees that would enhance their pensions in later years. Thank you. And I have copies here for you and the council, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the back? Okay, moving on to more public comments. These were the ones that were sent into our public comments through our town, so I'll be reading them. First up is Mr. Larry Fabry, 508 East Main Street, Sunset Beach. I am opposed to changing the ordinance 9508, which would allow pets on the beach strand for an extended period of time. Far too many times I have witnessed dog owners fail to properly and completely clean up the dog feces, often failing to attempt to clean it up at all. This already makes for an unsanitary condition on the beach where children and grandchildren are playing, and extended hours will only exacerbate the situation. Next is Rosalie Rockefeller, 242 4D Clubhouse Road. It is terribly disturbing that either the rental companies are failing to advise the clients to follow the beach one-way signs. Signs are embarrassed, but some are embarrassed, but many are blunt and don't care. Masks are limited or not at all. Some may make fun of people wearing masks. Many complain about lack of supplies and limit on many items. Supposedly people are told to bring items with them. Some say no one told them. Is it possible to mandate face covering? It is required in Massachusetts. Next up is Karen Fox, 133 Crooked Gully Circle. I want to comment about the directional signs for the walkways. They are a hot topic in various Facebook groups. I own property in Sunset Beach and have been in the town for the past 8 days. I realize that the signs were made very quickly at the council's direction. The current signs are flimsy and when the wind is blowing, can't seem to be seen. They are basically folded in half. At least 2 were noted as missing, so either they blew away or were easily stolen. If the town continues with the plan of one-way walkways, it might be good to invest in real signs and not laminated paper ones. Even cardboard or metal ones from an online source would be substantial and probably could be used for several years. Thank you. Miss Kim Brandt, 803 Oyster Shell Drive, Sunset. The porta-johns are not being cleaned, have no toilet paper, and no hand washing access. So please bring back our bathroom back and open the park bathroom so we can wash our hands with running water. Using a dirty porta-john is not sanitary and there is no way to wash afterwards. This cannot be healthy for anyone. Cleaning supplies are back in the stores. Toilet paper is plentiful and soap dispensers can be filled. Thank you. All right, this is Julie Miser, and I don't actually see the address on this one. As a part-time resident, I am appalled by the use of filthy porta potties with our town owns clean trailers with sinks and soap for wash hands. The virus is killed by soap and water. To go back to the aniquiated mess is not worthy of a beautiful town. If you are so worried about being sued out of enter at your own risk and hold a harmless, if you are worried about being sued out enter at your own risk and hold harmless on the wall before entering. I missed what she was saying in there.
She said put a sign up.
Yeah, basically, but she
Enter
didn't
at
say
your
it
own
like
risk.
that. This is not helping the spread, to stop the spread. Neither are the one-way walks on the beach. My adult children both work in affected hospitals in Atlanta. Your risk of getting this on a walkway in the sun and sea air is If you are unsure that the power is given to you by the governor, please refer to legal counsel, but the governor has stated many times that you, as elected officials, have the power to set strict rules for our. Thank you for your understanding and consideration.
Mr. Mayor, can't hear you. We lost the sound. We lost the sound, Hiram.